My dear friend, I want to begin today with a question that may cause you to pause for a moment. The thing we so often call love, could it sometimes be nothing more than the fear of being left alone? I have lived for more than 6 decades, listened to hundreds of patients, friends, and even my own story. And I have come to a difficult truth. Many people enter relationships not because they have found wholeness within themselves, but because they cannot bear the silence of an empty room, the ticking clock with no one beside them. Have you ever felt that way? A woman in her 50s, a former patient of mine, once confessed, "Doctor, I know my marriage no longer has love, but I still hold on. I'm afraid if I leave, my evenings will be nothing but 4 walls and the sound of the wind through the window." Do you see, sometimes we stay not because of love, but because we fear facing ourselves. The Stoic philosophers, from Seneca to Marcus Aurelius, spoke very clearly inner freedom is the greatest treasure. Yet ironically, we often give up that freedom willingly just to avoid loneliness. We let fear wear the costume of romance and call it love, while deep inside our heart whispers, "This is not truly my path." I want you to imagine this one day you're lying on your deathbed. The room is silent and you ask yourself, did I truly live my own life? Or did I merely exist in someone else's shadow? That is not an easy question, but it is necessary. Because if we spend our lives chasing the approval of others, we may miss the greatest opportunity to meet our true self. In my many years as a doctor, I have seen people come together more out of fear than love. An elderly man once told me, "Doctor, I cannot be alone. I need someone to help me forget the emptiness." But you know that emptiness itself was the real invitation. It invited him to sit, to listen, to face his memories and pain, and from there to find the strength to heal. Carl Jung once wrote, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that are important to you." And I find that painfully true. How many of us lie beside someone every night, yet feel lonelier than ever? My dear friend, if love is born from fear, it will be fragile. A small disagreement can shake its foundation. A moment of silence between 2 people can feel like a crack in the glass. At that point, love is no longer love. It is merely a survival tactic. Marcus Aurelius reminded us it is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live. How many of us have stopped truly living just because we were afraid of losing someone? How many of us have shrunk, abandoned dreams, and silenced our joy just to cling to a relationship that seemed safe? I once asked a man in his 60s, "Do you still paint like you did when you were young?" He shook his head. "My wife never liked the smell of oil paint, so I gave it up long ago." Do you see? Sometimes the giving up is quiet. No one forced us, but little by little we disappear. And the price we pay is not love, but our very identity. You may think, so am I supposed to live alone forever? No. What I want to say is not to reject love, but this true love must begin with your own wholeness. When you can sit in a quiet room without a phone ringing, without needing anyone to fill the emptiness and still feel at peace, that is when you're truly ready to love. At first, solitude may feel like a dark room that suffocates you. But if you stay long enough, you realize the light comes from within. You hear your true voice, the dreams buried long ago, the desires you thought were lost. And in that moment, you begin to live not out of avoidance, but out of choice. Let me leave you with this question. If tomorrow you lost every relationship, would you still feel whole? The answer will tell you whether you are living in love or in fear. And I want you to remember, you have always been a whole human being. Love, when it comes, should be a gift to share, not a crutch to lean on. When you find peace within yourself, you no longer love out of fear of loneliness, but because you have so much to give. That is the kind of love no distance, no absence can destroy. It is built on freedom, not fear. And as the Stoics taught, no one can take away your inner freedom unless you choose to give it up. The power of solitude and creativity in silence. My dear friend, when I was a young doctor, I used to be afraid of silence. I remembered those night shifts at the hospital, the hallways so empty that only the beeping of the heart monitor echoed. In those moments, I felt as if I were drowning in loneliness. But it was in that very silence that I began to learn something important. Solitude is not the enemy. It is a teacher. Many people run from solitude in every possible way, through television, social media, endless phone call. But the more they run, the further they drift from themselves. I once had a patient, a man in his 70s, who fell into crisis after his wife passed away. He told me, "Doctor, the house is now so quiet that I'm afraid to even open the door." He tried to fill the void with TV playing all day and constant visits with friends. But the more crowded his days became, the emptier he felt. Only when he started the habit of sitting quietly by the window, watching the sunlight shift across the garden, did he realize that silence wasn't swallowing him, it was inviting him to listen to his own soul. Have you ever felt that way when you turn off all the noise and it's just you with yourself? At first, silence can be uncomfortable. It surfaces fears, memories, questions you've been avoiding for years. But if you stay with it long enough, you begin to hear something else, the true voice within. Carl Jung once wrote, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." And in solitude, we are invited to awaken. You begin to see more clearly what truly brings you joy and what is just a habit imposed from outside. You start to separate your own dreams from the dreams society planted in you. I had a patient who used to be a pianist. She gave up music for 20 years, busy with family duties, because her husband and children didn't want to hear the sound of the piano. After her husband died, she fell into deep sorrow. One day, in the silence of her house, she opened the dusty lid of her piano and let her hands touch the keys again. The first notes were clumsy, but her eyes filled with tears. She told me in the silence, "I found my voice again." Do you see, solitude opens the door to creativity? In silence, ideas emerge, hidden desires rise. Creativity does not need an audience right away, nor instant applause. It needs space to breathe, to fail to repeat until you touch something real. The Stoics also understood this. Seneca once said, "Withdraw into yourself as far as you can, not to escape, but to protect the seed of an idea, to nurture it until it is strong enough to face the world." We often think solitude is a loss, but in truth, it is fertile soil for growth. Modern science agrees. Neuroscientists have shown that when the brain is not flooded with external stimulation, the default mode network activates. That's when we connect memories, experiences, and intuition to create new insights. Perhaps you've had a eureka moment while walking alone or taking a shower. That is the power of silence. It gives the brain a space to weave something new. I remember once sitting alone in the park at dawn when the leaves were still wet with dew and the sky not yet bright. In that moment, I realized that for years I had lived too much for others and not enough for myself. From then on, I began writing daily journals, like private conversations with myself. And slowly those pages became the place where I could clearly see my dreams and my limits. You can try this. Spend 10 minutes every morning sitting quietly, no phone, no music, just you and your breath. At first, your mind will be restless, filled with to-do lists and small worries. But if you stay patient, the silence will slowly turn into clarity. You will begin to hear the important questions. What truly matters to me? Am I living according to my values? The Stoics believed that silence is the first step toward freedom, because only when you sit with yourself can you truly know what you need instead of merely reacting to the wants of others. And once you've tasted the power of solitude, you no longer fear it. You begin to protect it like the sacred ground where your soul returns home. My dear friend, society may have taught you that loneliness is failure, that silence is emptiness. But the truth is, it is in solitude that you discover fullness. It is in silence that you hear your deepest voice. And when you reclaim that voice, you not only live true to yourself, but you bring a completely different quality to love and relationships. Because when you learn to stand firm in silence, you no longer need others to fill the void. You will choose love, choose connection from wholeness, not from fear, and such love cannot be broken by distance or absence. It is built on freedom, not on the anxiety of loss. Let me ask you this. When was the last time you truly sat with yourself without anyone or anything intruding? If the answer feels too far away, then maybe it's time to return to yourself on a quiet morning in a room with nothing but you and your breath. And who knows, in that moment, you may rediscover the flame you thought had long gone out. My dear friend, we all carry a deeply human longing to belong to a family, a circle of friends, a life partner. That sense of belonging brings safety, like having a roof to return to after a storm. But I want to ask you a hard question. Have you ever paid a price to hold on to that belonging? Over years of conversations with patients and peers, I've learned a painful truth. The cost of belonging is rarely paid in big fights or obvious losses, but in small, quiet installments. You bite your lip and don't say what you think, just to avoid upsetting someone. You shelve an old dream afraid it might disrupt the shared rhythm. You hold back your joy or hide your real sorrow just to keep the family's surface calm. I remember a man in his 60s, a former patient. He had loved painting since childhood, but as he built a family, the brushes and colors were slowly set aside. When I asked why, he smiled sadly. She didn't like the smell of paint, said it was bothersome. So I stopped. I told myself, it's fine, I don't need it. Yet his eyes drifted far away, and I knew he'd never stop missing the feeling of holding a brush. He had paid for belonging by burying a part of his soul. Have you ever done that? Stayed silent when you truly wanted to speak simply because you feared losing someone's approval. Perhaps you told yourself, everyone must compromise. That's the price of love. But what's the difference here? How do we know when compromise is healthy and when it becomes self-erasure? Stoicism teaches the brave are free. Compromise can be healthy when it's rooted in love and voluntary choice. But when it's driven by fear, fear of being left, fear of losing validation, each concession costs you a piece of your freedom. Over time, those losses accumulate like drops of water, wearing down a rock until one day the self is eroded. The danger is that this process is slow, almost invisible. At first you think, just this once. You give up the meal you wanted, change the TV program, cancel the trip you look forward to. Then again and again, it becomes a habit. One day, you look in the mirror and see someone familiar in shape, but a stranger in spirit. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." When your thoughts are daily adjusted to match others' expectations, your soul slowly changes color from vivid to faded. You begin to believe maybe this is who I really am, when in fact it's only a version edited to fit the frame of belonging. I also remember a woman in her 50s who told me she no longer recognized herself after 3 decades of marriage. She said, I used to love traveling and reading philosophy, but my husband said those things were pointless. Over time, I stopped bringing them up. Now, I don't know what I truly like. I only know what I should do to keep him pleased. She didn't cry, but her voice trembled. I knew there is a sorrow deeper than tears. My dear friend, that is the cost of belonging when it's not built on freedom. It turns you into a safe version of yourself, acceptable, predictable, yet stripped of your original sharpness. And ironically, that sharpness, your personality, passion, and honest laughter is what makes love and friendship come alive. Lose it and you lose yourself. and the relationship loses the very substance that made it beautiful. Stoicism does not reject love or community. On the contrary, it honors them. But it reminds us true connection can only exist when both people remain themselves. If you must disappear to keep a relationship, that relationship cannot truly hold you. I invite you to ask yourself, is there something in your life you stopped doing or stopped saying because you feared disappointing someone? If so, write it down. Seeing it on the page reveals which parts of you have been pushed aside. That recognition is the first step to reclaiming them. My dear friend, belonging should not be a trap. It should be the soil where you can bloom fully, not a place where you are trimmed to fit. When you keep your truth, love is not threatened, it grows stronger. Because true love does not fear difference, it fears pretense. And if you have lost yourself in the journey of belonging, remember, it is never too late to return. One small step speaking, one true thought, revisiting an old hobby, giving yourself a quiet morning, and begin the restoration of your relationship with yourself. Love does not require you to become smaller. True love gives you room to expand, to shine. And when you find a relationship like that, you will see belonging is no longer a price to pay, but a gift to receive.